Ready, set, go!
It'll be ready in 3. No, 2 days, tops. Who's there? Yes, I want to report a murder. No murders. Sorry, officer. What do I do? Is anyone there? What the fuck? Yeah. I'm Grace. Ashcroft. I don't know. I'm sorry if I surprised you. It's okay. We're not infected. What?
Well guys, Capcom did it. They truly did it. They made the greatest Resident Evil game of all time. It's perfect in absolutely every way and everything you've been waiting for as a Resident Evil fan. It truly does stand up to the best games in the franchise, such as RE3 Remake and RE4 Remake, and of course, RE2 Remake. A true masterpiece and an absolute gift from the Capcom gods.
You serious?
At least that's what I would be telling you if I was one of the many soulless golems and tourists trying to ride in on the hype train, completely ignoring the fact that this is about half of a good game, almost entirely riding on member berries, a plot that makes less sense the more you think about it, and from what I've seen has plenty of other people just as confused as I am on certain aspects, along with one of the worst fucking retcons that anybody who's played the original game should find borderline insulting. But of course, the same people who think this game's a masterpiece are probably the same type of people who claim that RE1 Remake needs another remake because apparently fixed camera angles are outdated and dog shit, and instead we need generic Gears of War style over-the-shoulder third-person camera. And the fact that RE9 somehow has about 3 times the amount of max players as any of the other Resident Evil games on Steam to date, I would say that backs my tourist claim pretty hard.
Getting real tired of tourist season. No offense, but you guys are
fucking retarded.
But with that out of the way, like I said, RE9 is about half of a good game, meaning I didn't hate everything about it. And personally, I was genuinely looking forward to this game with the announcement of Leon, and as a Resident Evil fan, and went in hoping for the best. So really, this review comes out of a place of disappointment, especially with Capcom's running trend of declining quality, from a company that was once putting out constant bangers. And a lot of the things that do drag down Resident Evil 9 genuinely pissed me off because they'd seem like such easy fixes, and a handful of them were things that just made me sit there and go, what the fuck were you guys thinking? If you had done it like X instead of Y, it would have made this game so much more enjoyable or replayable overall. And outside of a dog shit intro that drags on for way too long and genuinely kind of made me start to dislike Grace right off the bat, I did feel like the game started pretty strong once you get to the actual gameplay section in the first major area, only for almost everything to decline after that, seemingly getting worse and worse the longer the game goes on, despite only being about 10 hours long and even shorter than the RE4 remake. There's really only about 2 other areas after that I felt like were anywhere close to the first area in the hospital. So without wasting any more time running my mouth on the intro, let's start with the gameplay. So since the first major gameplay segment is with Grace, let's start with her. And dear God, do I have some fucking choice words for this stuttering Stanley over here, and her constant stammering that doesn't cease until damn near the very end of the fucking game. But first let me just go ahead and talk about her character design to go ahead and get that out of the way. And I'll say right off the bat that I don't think Grace is ugly or anything like that. She seems like a pretty normal looking white chick if I'm being honest with you, and I could picture her working at an office. But what I will say is that compared to virtually every other female protagonist in the Resident Evil series, her design is completely fucking bland, with a body that features basically 0 curves, and an outfit that lacks virtually any sex appeal, especially when compared to a character like Ada Wong. And personally, I feel like this wouldn't be near as big of an issue if it wasn't for the fact that Capcom has explicitly said in the past that they plan to tone down their female designs and tone down past character designs in the remakes such as Ashley. But then they'll turn around and specifically hire women to come in and design 49-year-old Leon Kennedy just to make him as handsome as possible to appeal to women. And then on top of that, tons of these so-called gaming journalists, which are mostly ran by trannies and DEI hires anyways, will have no problem writing plenty of articles about how handsome Leon is and about how much sex appeal he has, when these were the same fucking faggots that were trying to gaslight people who bought Stellar Blade into being nothing but degenerate gooners because these types of games and standards are unfair and objectify women.
Pardon me, but that's bullshit.
Fuck off. So what is it? Either we can or can't have sexy character designs. You don't get to have your cake and shove it down your fat fucking gullet too. Rules for thee and not for me when it comes to horniness, of course. And needless to say, it definitely stands out when you put Leon and Grace side by side and just look at how tame her design is in comparison. And then to make this even worse, Capcom's greedy fucking ass only included 2 costumes in the base game, one for Grace and one for Leon, and locked all the other ones behind the $15 deluxe edition upgrade. And of course, one of the skins in this pack is the Lady Demetrius skin from RE8 that quite literally gives Grace a fatter ass. So if it wasn't already obvious enough that Capcom was toning down their female designs on purpose, they then have the balls to lock her sexier design behind a $15 paywall. And I definitely have a few other things to say about Grace's character, which in my opinion is the worst part about her, and although I definitely did find her more tolerable than RE2 remake Claire.
Son of a bitch! You bastard! You asshole! Fucking hell! Son of a bitch! Bastard! What the hell? Fuck. Fuck. Damn it.
I'll go more in detail in her character in the story section. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about her actual gameplay. So I'll say right off the bat that my biggest concern going into this game prior to its release was Grace's gameplay sections, as I was worried they would either be really fucking boring or would be almost entirely focused on poorly made stealth mechanics based on the gameplay that was shown. And I will admit that to my surprise, after you get past the shitty first 2 hours of the game and actually get to the care center or the hospital, whatever the fuck you want to call it, Grace probably has actually the best area in the entire game. The bad news is that every single area after this, in which she only really has 2, are significantly worse, and her gameplay never again reaches the peaks of the care center. But I do think it's pretty obvious what they were trying to do here with the 2 different characters, and that's that Grace is supposed to play more like the classic Resident Evil games, or by classics, I mean Capcom's remakes, and her areas are way more reminiscent of the RE2 remake and the RE3 remake, whereas Leon's sections play way more like RE4 through 6. And you can play either of these characters first or third person. Me personally, I decided to go with what the game recommended, and that's first person for Grace and third person for Leon. And honestly, I would probably agree that that's best, at least for your first playthrough. I'm currently doing a second playthrough on Insanity and just doing third person for both. And I do agree that the first person kind of helps amplify Grace's scare factor, but personally, I didn't find this game very scary past maybe the first couple hours, and I had a pretty firm understanding of how the giant bitch's mechanics work. And when I say that Grace's gameplay is way more like RE Remake 2 and 3, I mean that they're much more slower paced than Leon's sections, and are way more puzzle focused, and put much more of an emphasis on resource and inventory management. Although with puzzles being mentioned, I'll just go ahead and say it. This game does not have a single difficult puzzle. And while to be fair, most of the Resident Evils don't have difficult puzzles puzzles outside of maybe the clock tower one in Resident Evil 3. I gotta say that these ones are definitely bare minimum and require basically zero thought. And because of that, there's actually a story moment with Grace that really pissed me off that I'll get to in a bit. Let me just go ahead and say what I thought was particularly cool about the care center and why it stands out compared to the rest of the areas in the game. But the best way I could simply describe the care center is that it's essentially just the RPD from Resident Evil 2, and even the puzzle is basically the same, where you have to make your way around this care center, finding 3 different puzzle pieces to unlock the main door. But the care center also offers what feels like something new around almost every single corner, usually in the form of a new zombie or something. And speaking of the zombies in this game, I do want to point out something that I liked, and that's that the zombies in this game actually retain part of their personality from before they became a zombie, and actually continue to do things that they performed in their daily lives. For example, there's an opera zombie that walks around the building singing, and if she notices you, she'll scream and attract all the other zombies to you. There's a chef that's constantly walking around the kitchen, chopping up meat, and another zombie that for some reason hates the lights. I'm not sure what that implies about him before he became a zombie, unless maybe he was just really self-conscious or something. And along with retaining parts of their personality, they also can speak a little bit, usually just rambling about some shit related to what they were doing before they got infected by the T-virus. You can also even sometimes use this to your advantage to get through certain areas without even having to fire a bullet, such as turning lights on and off to distract the zombie that hates them, so he's more preoccupied with that than you. A core part of the care center that also reminded me of RE2 is that you have to carry and manage your resources between both the east and the west wing of the map, as different items from both sides are required to gain access to the full map. And on each of these wings is one unique, what I guess you could call mini boss, or is basically just kind of like a weaker Mr. X type enemy that constantly patrols the area and is a pretty big threat if they catch you. On the west wing, there's the giant chef zombie that I mentioned prior, who is actually really weak due to a mechanic that I'm gonna mention next. And on the east wing, there's Boogie 2988.
I'm in tremendous pain! I'm in tremendous pain! Help me! Help me! Help me! I'm in so much pain! I'm in so much pain!
As he constantly tries to slide his fat fucking ass through the halls, and can't even fit through half of the doorways. But really, unless you're playing on Insanity, Boogie's hardly a threat, due to just how fucking slow and immobile he is, from years of Mountain Dew abuse, and lying about having cancer. Just make sure you don't let him block the doorway while you're stuck in a room with multiple zombies, especially on Insanity mode. And outside of just being a generally well-designed map that I had a pretty good time exploring, the final major mechanic exclusive to Grace that I want to give some props to, or at the very least I had some fun with, is this blood gun that you gain access to fairly quickly into the care center and retain for the rest of the game. And basically what this blood gun does is allow you to harvest blood that you either find in buckets around the map, or you gain from just killing zombies in general, and you can actually get even more if you specifically shoot them in the head and leg. But I mean, if you've ever played Resident Evil, that's where you should already be shooting anyways. And what you can do with this blood is actually use it to craft resources. Yes, it is as stupid as it sounds, it makes zero fucking sense, and is borderline necromancy, but all you need to craft basically anything is scrap or rare metal that you find around the map, and honestly there's plenty of. And as you explore the care center, you'll find vials that unlock blueprints to even more crafting materials, with one of them eventually being stabilizers, which allow you to increase both your max health and your efficiency with a gun. Pretty much just being the replacement for yellow herbs in this game. But while I did enjoy this mechanic, I do have to question if it was balanced in even the fucking slightest. And if I'm being honest here, it also kind of ruins the whole resource management mechanic, because once you get through a certain point in the care center, and pretty much for the entire rest of the game, you will have all the resources you need as long as you can find scrap and aren't just shoving every green herb up your ass the second you see it lying around. I mean, I legit had over 50 bullets for Grace by the time I finished the care center section, and about 12 bullets for the Requiem, which is Leon's handgun that he lends to her for a portion of the game, and is the only thing that requires the rare metal to craft. But even with that, I had excess amounts of bullets for it, along with all the stabilizers and max heals I needed due to only needing some blood and one green herb to craft one. And while I did enjoy this at first, I gotta admit that I kind of started to like it a little less and less by the time I got to the end of the game, because resource management is something I enjoy in the Resident Evil games. It's kind of a huge part of it, some might argue, at least in most of the games. But really, once you're past the first few hours, the only resource management you'll be doing is dropping off excess materials in your lockbox. And I'm gonna talk more about insanity mode in particular because it genuinely pissed me the fuck off, and I do not think it's balanced in a fun way. But I figured that insanity mode would actually fix this since it's the hard mode for this game. But even in insanity mode, honestly, around the same point as in the base game, it instantly became 4 times easier once I got all the blueprints I needed and had a good amount of blood, and I pretty much just wound up in the same situation where I had all the ammo I needed, all the healing items I needed at all times. So while it is kind of a fun mechanic, I genuinely just do not think it was properly thought out. And as long as you're not bordering on the same levels of retardation as DSP, you shouldn't have any issues managing all the scrap you find. And in addition to that, it also completely shits on any need for stealth, which I'm not gonna lie, I enjoyed, because this game, despite wanting you to do some stealth, has basically zero stealth mechanics outside of throw a bottle and hide behind something and wait there for a few seconds until something walks by. So while I'm not really upset that it shits on the stealth, I don't think that was the intention from the developers, especially considering that the second area you get to, which is the basement, definitely wants you to stealth, and as soon as I realized I had no need to since I had 12 bullets for my motherfucking Requiem, I stopped hiding really fast.
Absolutely. Dumb bitch.
Which is also why I wonder how this game was so scary for some people, because you can 100% fight back as Grace, especially when you have like 6 mags for your fucking pistol like I did. The only mechanic that Grace has that isn't from the older Resident Evil games is that she borrows Leon's finisher mechanic from RE4, except way more fucking lame.
Charlie Kirky, I spot the perky. Charlie Kirky.
And if you shoot a zombie in the head or leg enough times, then Grace will walk up and push the zombie over, which, while looking lame, does get it out of your face and can also knock over other zombies in your path. But sadly, this section is fairly short-lived, especially once you get a hang of the layout of the care center. And then, like I said before, it is only down fucking hill from there as you move on to the basement. But you know how I said that the care center had a good layout, was fun to explore, and even if the puzzles were extremely simple, they were at least a little satisfying? Well, not anymore, because now you're in some shitty, dark, dingy, fucking sewer-looking basement, and you have to quietly make your way around in the dark trying to get 3 fuses at once so you can open this jail cell, and you do that by taking 1 fuse at a time to move from box to box to open new areas and get everything that you need. The only problem is that the big dirty old fucking spear hunter hag from the intro is constantly hunting you the entire time in the dark. And really, this entire area only really has about 1 memorable part, and that's where you have to shoot some zombies as you're slowly being pulled into a big meat grinder, and you can push some of the zombies inside. That's about it. And like I said before, as soon as I remembered just how many Requiem bullets I had, I decided fuck this boring ass stealth, because believe it or not, it is not fun to slowly walk from one room to the other and sit behind some bullshit box as she walks left and right across the room, wasting 30 seconds or more only to move on to the next area. And it stops being scary after about the first 10 minutes at max. So instead of that, every time that bitch would get in my way, I would just pull out the Requiem, blow out the back of her head, and just run right past her. Only to then get to this part in insanity mode and realize I could not do that because now you have to shoot this bitch 3 fucking times just to stun her, and I would rather save my ammunition for something else. Which is when I truly realized just how boring this area is when you have to constantly stop every few minutes just for her programming to look left and right and then fuck off somewhere else. But luckily that section isn't very long, but after that, Grace only really gets one more area, which I'll save to talk more about in the story section. Before I talk about Leon, let me just go ahead and get some of my other basic gameplay complaints out of the way. With one of the biggest ones being, why the fuck does Grace only have access to 2 guns for the entire game? She technically has access to 3, but 2 of them are just pistols, and 1 pistol is just better in every single stat, so why the fuck would you use the other one? So there might as well only be 2 guns. And Leon takes the Requiem back at one point in the game, meaning that she really only has 1 fucking gun. Why? In basically every single Resident Evil out there, you get access to at least a shotgun at some point, with RE2 being a good example where you can play as Claire, another chick with similar gameplay to Grace, and lo and behold, she gets access to a grenade launcher, a crossbow, and a handgun all off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure she gets an SMG too, as long as you don't take it as Leon, and I don't find she's not trained to use them as a very fun gameplay excuse, when that leaves me with only 2 guns to use for the whole fucking game, and only 1 in the latter half. For someone not trained with guns, she sure learns how to use the Requiem awfully fucking fast. Just ask Spear Hunter's forehead. Luckily, she can craft Molotovs, and she can craft these injector things, which if you sneak up behind a zombie, you can stab in their back and it blows them up. I guess Grace just gives them a Fent overdose. And that injector is exactly why I said the chef in the West Wing is absolutely zero problem, because both in the base game and on insanity mode, all it takes is one of these things to give him an overdose. He looks mightier than the rest, but just like them, he cannot breathe. Whereas it takes like 3 of these baggies to kill fucking Boogie over on the East Wing. But again, I don't think craftable throwables and overdoses makes up for a lack of guns, which is the primary thing you'll be using the entire game. Another big complaint I have about the general zombies in this game is the magnetism, because god damn that shit is bad. I have seen zombies lunge me down entire staircases. I have seen zombies lunge me 8 feet from the other side of a room. I have seen zombies 180 around corners just to grab my ass. And not just does that piss me the fuck off, especially on insanity mode where 1 grab kills you as Grace, but it just feels cheap as fuck. And there definitely are times you can bait out a grab and then run around them, but good luck doing that when there's either more than 1 zombie or you're in some tight ass fucking hallway with simply no room to bait them out. In basically all of the Resident Evil games, your movement and your placement when shooting has always been one of the most important parts of not getting grabbed by zombies. And in most of the Resident Evil games, outside of in particular parts of the map, you can almost always run around a zombie as long as you time it properly and are careful. And that's also where a big part of the resource management comes into play, because you have to decide, is this zombie worth shooting? Is this zombie worth the bullets I could save for later for another potentially worse situation? Or should I go ahead and clear this roadblock now so it doesn't potentially fuck me over in the long run? If you decide on the option A, then you can typically just run around it as long as you're smart about it. And maybe this was intentional on Capcom to force combat, since like I said, I had over 50 fucking bullets as Grace. I practically killed everything in the care center before I left it because I had so much ammo, I didn't even need to save it. So maybe it was intentional from them, and Capcom simply feels like resource management isn't that important of a part of Resident Evil, when I feel like any long-term fan would not just disagree with that, but say it's blatant bullshit and is actually one of the things that makes Resident Evil fun. It might not sound fun, but when you're actually playing the game and you have to think about how important every single one of your resources is, it certainly enhances the gameplay. So please, Capcom, fuck off with this bullshit magnetism that I have multiple clips of that just feels cheap. And don't try to take away resource management as a pivotal aspect of Resident Evil, because I always had plenty of resources for Leon as well. It's one of Resident Evil's core identities, and if you strip that, you're stripping a part of what Resident Evil is. That would be like removing multiple weapons from DMC. At this point, it's a core part of the franchise that people enjoy. What the fuck were you thinking? And in addition to the magnetism, there is simply just some cheap-ass, borderline scripted fucking zombie placements. There are multiple points where Capcom just placed a zombie right behind a fucking corner, so you just get cheaply insta-grabbed the second you turn it for some jump scare or something. Even though it's not scary at all, it just makes you sit there and go fuck off, because now I have to use a healing item to make up for it. It's not like it happens once, it happens multiple times, and I swear it happens even more in Insanity mode. There's even a scripted moment with the hag where you have to push a cart and then climb on top of it so you could grab a tool, and while you're pushing the cart, a laptop falls off of it because Grace is a bumbling retard, and then Spear Hunter jumps in the room. On my Insanity playthrough, I know the bitch was gonna smack the fucking desk halfway across the room back where I grabbed it and force me to push it back again, so I decided to throw a glass bottle before she got to it to distract her and hopefully not have to push the cart back, only for her to leave the room and then scriptedly walk back into the room, smack the cart, and then instantly leave the room again.
Oh god, I just got a balloon.
Yeah, stupid bitch. I knew she was gonna smack away the cart, so I threw the bottle before she got close to it.
So I can't spot him.
But don't tell- are you fucking kidding me? Is she literally scripted to come back into the room just to hit the cart?
Maybe.
You bitch, don't hit you. She did. She's literally scripted to come back and hit the cart. You fucking bitch. And these zombies are basically the exact same way. You could slowly walk around the corner, point your gun at them, stare them in the eye, they'll look you in your soul, and won't do a single thing until you shoot them. And like I said, this is especially fucking lame on Insanity mode, where one of these pussily placed zombies around a goddamn corner could mean costing you 30 minutes and getting sent back to a save point. Like, fuck off with the scripted shit. Because like 98% of the time, I guarantee you it's not scary. It's just annoying, and as soon as you notice it's scripted, it completely takes me out of it. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. Scripted shit is just lame and completely ruins my immersion, or whatever the fuck you want to call it.
It's a stupid, stupid game. It does not work.
Grace's movement also just feels extremely stiff sometimes, which can lead to some extremely rage-inducing moments. Like, there are so many times where I would be shooting at a zombie, stop shooting, and then try to quickly turn left or right to create some distance, only either for Grace to start moving at a literal snail's pace, which I'm pretty sure is due to this stupid fucking inertia movement, which was also an RE4 remake from what I can remember, and just feels like shit. And the reason being is in its name. The movement uses an inertia formula. You start moving at a snail's pace and take a couple seconds to pick it up a notch until you eventually kick it into a full sprint. And I'm not sure what the point of this is, and I don't even want to hear realism because there's nothing realistic about it. It's retarded. If you were shooting at a zombie and it started fucking charging at you, you're gonna quickly get out of its way, not stand there and then slowly fucking move. Even with tank controls, this wasn't an issue. If a zombie started getting too close, you could just quickly stop aiming, turn right or left, and then move forward on a dime. I don't know if the inertia movement is supposed to be some kind of replacement for tank controls, because I'm not gonna lie to you, at that point I'd just rather have tank controls, because these issues weren't prevalent in tank controls. And I know that's an unrealistic expectation, because Capcom is never gonna bring them back, but if that's the case, then you need to improve this fucking inertia system, because I shouldn't stop shooting with excess time, only to still get hit just because Grace is moving that goddamn slow. Or if that doesn't happen, she will move, and then as soon as I try to move in a different direction, it just won't register my input, and she'll stand there until I press the button again. But overall, it just made for a lot of extremely janky moments, and I feel like the movement system needs a little bit of polish, because there are a lot of times when it just doesn't feel good when you need it to. And my final gameplay complaint, not related to Leon exclusively, is simply the game's difficulty, because there is no sweet spot. The game is either way too easy, or it's just pretty obnoxious. But the base game difficulty that everybody starts with offers just virtually zero challenge, and I would even go as far as to say that I think it's the easiest Resident Evil to date on normal difficulty. And I genuinely died more times to shit in the environment than I did actual zombies. And I mean easy to the point where you barely feel challenged. Because not just do you always have excess resources, like I've already said, on both Grace and Leon, but you can also just take quite a lot of hits. And even when you do get low, again, like I already said, you have almost unlimited access to healing items. Combine that with the fact that basically every single boss fight in this game, outside of one or two of them, is just some variation of run down a hallway, shoot a couple times, run down a hallway, shoot a couple times, and Grace not actually having a single boss fight in the game. No, I don't count Boogie and the Chef as bosses, or the Hag, since you're not actually forced to fight any of them at any point in the game as Grace. And you are left with one extremely easy game. That might not sound like that many reasons to some of you guys, but anyone that's played Resident Evil knows that your inventory management and your limited supplies is where like half the difficulty in the game comes from. Because when you always have exactly the right gun or tool you need at the exact right moment, Resident Evil tends to get pretty trivial. There's a reason why infinite ammo tends to make every single game an absolute breeze. Whereas on the other hand, you have Insanity Mode, which you unlock after completing the game for the first time, and is essentially this game's equivalent to Professional Mode in the RE4 remake, whereas instead of actually putting some thought into how to make it more difficult, they just decided to make it so that every single fucking zombie can eat 20 bullets to the head, almost never get stunned, and virtually everything in the entire care center will kill you in one fucking hit. I swear I died more times in my first 20 minutes of Insanity Mode than I did my entire fucking base playthrough. Let's make every song.
Oh my god, this fucking thing's gonna leave me! This part is so fucking Down syndrome!
It is just such a fucking lazy example of balancing. Like, we can't think of anything actually clever, so just make every single enemy a fucking bullet sponge and give the playable character glass bones. But I guess it shouldn't be that big of a surprise that our characters have glass bones when they've been infected by the T virus, weakening their bones with estrogen provided straight from Spear Hunter. And yet, despite that, once you get about halfway through the care center, it also begins to get pretty fucking trivial for the exact same reason the base game does. And that's because, thanks to your old trusty necromancy, you'll wind up with basically just as many bullets as you did in the base game. And all of a sudden, everything becomes much easier, as now you can just kill every single zombie that was blocking your way beforehand. But it's just an absolutely terrible example of balance done by Capcom. And while on the topic of Capcom, much like traditional traditional Capcom fashion, as they've already been doing with Monster Hunter Worlds and Dragon's Dogma 2, Resident Evil 9 is yet another example of one of their games lacking content on launch. Because not just does RE9 already suffer from replayability issues because of things that I'll mention in the story section, which is also pretty much a first for Resident Evil. I can't think of any prior Resident Evil that had replayability issues. But on top of that, there is no mercenary mode or any sort of extra mode to be seen. But of course, it's not like we should expect this when Resident Evil 4 Remake didn't even fucking launch with mercenaries and we had to wait for them to add it there later. But at least that was confirmed. For all I know, RE9 is never gonna get a mercenaries mode. There's not even an extra mode like RE2's Fourth Survivor mode, despite him actually making a member berry appearance in the game. So maybe they'll add something later, but as of right now, if you buy this game for $70, you are getting just the story and zero extras, so just know that beforehand.
You know, you greedy ass motherfuckers, that's what you are, you greedy ass motherfuckers.
And now that I've gotten my praise and bitching out of the way for the basic gameplay along with Grace specific bullshit, let's move on to Leon, who despite having some fun moments, Capcom also managed to severely drop the ball on a couple areas.
Over here.
So I feel like the best way to describe Leon's combat would be that it's a slightly downgraded version of RE4 Remake's combat, which I already thought was a downgrade from the original RE4, but with a couple new mechanics that were at least good enough additions for me to mostly enjoy his gameplay. But of course, just like Grace, I feel like there are some weird glaring issues and things that were already done better in previous games. Of course, just like in traditional Capcom fashion. But first, let's talk about the new additions. With the first one being the fact that at the age of 49, after finally developing a midlife crisis and buying a Porsche, Leon finally realized that he could actually use the zombies' own weapons against them and pick them up off the floor, which I honestly found pretty fun to do and makes for both a quick way to help with crowd control by quickly killing the nearest zombie, but it also makes for some pretty fucking satisfying finishers as well, especially whenever you're able to wield a chainsaw. But unfortunately, there's only about 2 moments in the entire fucking game where you actually get an opportunity to do that. Most of the time, you'll just be using either spears or sledgehammers. I'm guessing at some point after Resident Evil 6, Leon booked a flight to Africa to receive some spear chucking lessons from Shiva and the natives. In this game, Leon also, for the first time ever, instead of using a knife, now has a hatchet, Rick Grimes style, and with this hatchet, you can now sometimes instant kill certain enemies after you hit them with a regular takedown, usually being Leon's roundhouse kick. And not just do these finishing moves, sometimes interact with the nearby environment, adding some more variety to the finishers, but also just simply feels pretty good to pull off. Another thing you can do with this mechanic is actually stealth kill zombies if you come up from behind them without them noticing, which isn't really needed at any point in the game whatsoever, considering how fucking overpowered Leon is. But I kinda liked it, especially on Insanity mode where every enemy is a fucking bullet sponge, because not just did it save me some time from having to fight every single fucking zombie in my way, but also allows you to save a little bit of ammunition, not that it's needed. But considering that one of the bloater head zombies can eat about 5 to 6 fucking shotgun blasts, you can see why it might be a good thing to be able to insta-kill the fuckers at a certain point in the game.
Smell like bitch in here!
And another thing about the hatchet that's different is that unlike Leon's knife in the RE4 remake where it had durability and would eventually break if you tried to parry or fight enough with it, in this game Leon's hatchet has infinite durability, but it gradually loses sharpness the more you use it, but is really a complete non-issue considering that all you have to do is press E and Leon will fully sharpen it in about 2 fucking seconds, and there is no limit to this whatsoever. So Leon basically just starts the game game with an infinite durability knife, but I'll talk a little more about that in the negative section. But the final new mechanic that kind of works in tandem with the new finishers is that Leon now has, I guess what you could call gun finishers or gun executions, which are basically just a unique animation that will perform depending on the type of gun that you're using, and will automatically happen if you shoot a zombie at point blank range, while the zombie is only one shot away from death. It usually happens pretty randomly since you don't have any real way of knowing just how much health a zombie has left other than guessing, but when it does happen it feels pretty good and looks badass. So I guess it's a cool new addition, and it does kind of go to show just how skilled Leon is by this point, so I don't really have any complaints about it, but I feel like it's something worth mentioning, as I definitely grinned a little bit the first time I pulled it off. But those are really the only new additions from the RE4 remake in Leon's toolkit, and while like I said, Leon did for the most part feel good to play, now it's time to get into the negatives, because there were definitely some odd decisions made here that prevent him from feeling just as fun and as smooth as he should be. But hey, when all of Capcom's games are probably being made by a team of DEI hire Indians now, I guess we really cannot expect too much, sir. But the first problem I want to get into is of course one of the same problems that Grace had. Just to a lesser degree, thank God, considering that Grace only had 2 motherfucking guns. Again, dumbass idea. With that being said, Leon's selection was still pretty pitiful, or at the bare minimum could have been presented and done much better. With the main issue being that Leon only really has 2 guns in each class, outside of the shotgun, which is the only class to have 3, at least in the base game and not counting extra unlocks. Whereas in the RE4 remake, not just did you have a much bigger variety of guns in general, including but not limited to at least 5 handguns compared to 2, an assault rifle, which honestly would have been much better in this game since you seem to have way more fucking ammo at every single point in the game, and an additional selection of hand cannon, where in this game you only get access to the Requiem. And not just did you have more guns in that game, but there was also a much bigger variety in options in terms of the upgrade system. And what I mean by that is that in RE9, basically every second gun that you can buy from the store is a 100% straight upgrade from the first gun. The second shotgun you get is better than the first shotgun. The second SMG you get is better than the first SMG. There's basically no reason not to buy and fully upgrade the second guns and sell the first ones at the first opportunity, outside of maybe the third shotgun, since both of those kinda have different uses. But even then, I would argue the second shotgun is directly better, since the police shotgun, while it does better damage, has a slower rate of fire and less range and accuracy, whereas the second shotgun shoots a lot faster and grants you greater range, so it honestly just feels better to use overall, especially when fully upgraded. Whereas in the RE4 remake, not every single gun was a direct upgrade, especially considering that in RE4 remake, once you fully upgraded a gun, you unlocked what's basically a final secret upgrade that would greatly increase the gun's power. And because of that, almost every single gun wound up being viable, and it mostly came down to what you preferred based on how it felt. And it really is just a straight fucking downgrade. Even though RE9 tries to make it look like an upgrade by allowing you to upgrade each part of the gun individually, when it really boils down to it, it's absolutely no different than the upgrade system from RE4 remake, and it's just a different UI with a worse system. And while I'm on the topic of the store, I gotta say that I really miss our favorite merchant and his one-liners.
Borrow $50.
$30? What do you need $20 for? Help! Police! A madman is trying to kill me over $5.
Hell, even though I didn't like RE8, I'd even take the Kirsch lookalike that sits in the back of the fucking cart, because at least he has more life than this boring fucking box that we get in Requiem. And this might sound like a lame complaint, but it's just so much more boring in comparison. I mean, would it really have been too out of the question for Capcom to create a new unique merchant for this game? Because this lockbox just sucks ass. And while on the topic of the store, another complaint I have is, why the fuck do you not unlock the store more for Leon until damn near over halfway through the game. When I say over, it's probably about like 70% of the way into the game. You do not unlock access to the shop and the ability to buy new guns or upgrade your current ones until you get to Raccoon City. What type of bullshit is that? What the fuck were they thinking? Luckily, when you start a new playthrough on Insanity, you get access to the store immediately, but I do not understand the thought process behind that. What was stopping you from doing that on the original playthrough? At least it would have made the parts before Raccoon City a little more interesting and allowed you to get more guns, but that just felt like a really odd choice to me. In RE4, you get access to the first shop pretty fucking early into the game, like right around the initial village area, so the whole shop aspect in general kinda just feels like something they put zero effort into. The worst part about it is you don't even earn any currency or keep any of your currency for the task you did before you actually unlock the store, so when you do finally unlock it, again about 70% of the way through the fucking game, it even kind of throws you off and makes you think the game's gonna be a lot longer than it actually is. At least it did for me, because I'm sitting there thinking, oh, if I'm just now getting access to the shop, I'm probably not even halfway through the game, only to then find out there was maybe only 3 or 4 hours left of the game max.
I'm retarded?
And my final complaint with the shooting and gun mechanics in this game is one of the same issues I had with the RE4 remake, except even fucking worse, which I don't know how they managed to do. You guys somehow managed to figure this out back in 2004, and that's that the stagger rates on the zombies are not just dog shit in general, but the ability to perform takedowns on zombies is so fucking inconsistent. That's one reason the combat felt so good in the original Resident Evil 4, is because the hit rates were basically almost always consistent. If you landed a couple shots on a zombie's head or a zombie's leg, then you could reliably trust the fact that you could perform a takedown afterwards, which would not just take down that zombie, but any zombies around it, allowing you to either get out of there or create some space to start shooting again. In RE4 Remake, they decided that it should take way more fucking shots to perform a takedown on a zombie, presumably since the tank controls are gone and you have greater movement. But at least in that game, the zombies still seem to react to your shots, especially when using a more powerful weapon like a shotgun or SMG, and you could still somewhat reliably guess how many shots it would take with a certain gun to perform a takedown once you gained a feel for the weapon. Where in RE9, the zombies barely even seem to react to your fucking shots, even if you're using a shotgun at point blank range. And on Insanity, it just makes the combat feel like shit. It also makes the SMG feel almost worthless, because the entire point of using the SMG is whenever you were being surrounded by a lot of zombies, you could reliably spray them and stagger a few of them to get a takedown so that you could get the fuck out of the bad position that you were in. Whereas in this game, you could fire 20 fucking SMG rounds into a zombie and it won't even react to it. It'll just keep walking towards you and grab your ass like you were just flicking fucking frozen peas at it.
Oh my gosh, what do I do?
It's hard for me to even find footage of me using the SMG in my playthrough, since basically the only time I whipped that bitch out was for certain boss battles just to quickly pump out some DPS. Even shotguns at point blank range do not reliably knock back zombies, and they will sometimes, after eating a slug directly to their fucking face 2 inches away, proceed to just walk through it and grab your ass like they're made out of adamantium. How does Capcom keep going backwards as a company? I used to like these fucking guys, and this shit just pisses me off to see them continuously go downhill on things that they previously got right on multiple of their IPs. Combine that with the fact that in Insanity mode, everything kills you, and basically 2 to 3 hits maxes Leon, and take 3 times the amount of shots to kill, and you pretty much have to exclusively rely on your parry mechanic, which I don't really want to have to do in a Resident Evil game. This isn't fucking Sekiro, but it just makes the overall gunplay feel awful, but at least it's only that bad in insanity mode, I guess. Something else to quickly get out of the way, and I don't know how many other people notice this, but if you've played the RE2 and the RE4 remake, I feel like the gore is just an overall downgrade in this game, and it feels like only really the zombies' heads and faces are actually affected by your shots. Like, yeah, you can shoot off a zombie's jaw, or make a zombie's eye fall out of its head or something, but when you shoot their body, it feels like your shots are doing basically nothing, whereas in the previous games, not just was the visual damage shown better on lower caliber guns, but it also felt like you could reliably shoot off certain limbs when using things like the shotgun, and the gore mechanics were just overall way better. Whereas in RE9, I legitimately didn't even realize there were gore mechanics until pretty far into the game, because it takes like fucking 5 shots directly to a zombie's kneecap to even make one of the legs come off. Combine that with the lack of stagger, the overly magnetized zombies, and the inconsistent hit stun, and the combat just overall tends to feel worse than even the RE4 remake. And while the new mechanics do kinda help make up for it, and definitely do make the overall experience more fun, gunplay is a pretty big part of Resident Evil, and it is what you'll be doing for the majority of time as Leon, so it's certainly a noticeable complaint. Now listen, you can call this a nitpick, but my final complaint in regards to Leon's gameplay specifically is in regards to the parry mechanic. And while I've already said my gripes about the mechanic in general, I don't completely hate it, at least the way it was done in the RE4 remake, because at least in the RE4 remake it had limitations. Like for example, you couldn't parry grabs on zombies without a weapon, and you couldn't parry certain boss attacks, and instead you had to press a QuickTime event like in the original RE4 to dodge it instead. But in Requiem, they said, fuck the quick time and dodge mechanic altogether, because I guess nobody liked that, other than RE4 being one of the best reviewed Resident Evils of all time, and you can now instead parry quite literally everything in the entire game, and I mean everything, such as literal fully automatic gunfire, a rocket launcher, and even a giant tentacle that is about 10 times the size of Leon himself and probably weighs well over a ton. Am I playing as a regular human being, or am I playing as fucking Goku in a wig? I mean, come on, man. Like, what are we doing here? Resident Evil has always really pushed it with its realism, especially with certain points in this game's story. But come on, man, like, we gotta call it somewhere. At the very least, bring the dodge mechanic back. I mean, who the fuck had a problem with that? It kinda just reeks of laziness, to be honest with you, and not wanting to create the animations for it. But with that out of the way, there's just 2 more things I want to mention real quick. With the first one being, this game's soundtrack, ass. Completely unmemorable. Half the time I didn't even realize it was playing, and there is quite literally only one song I actually remember, with that being the song that plays in the background of Raccoon City when you're playing as Leon, and the only reason I even remember that song is because every once in a while it would make a sound that sounded like that video of the pufferfish choking on a carrot. Like, what the fuck is that? Compare this to the great ambient soundtrack that the original RE2 had. I mean, just get a hit of this. Not just is it pleasant to listen to, it's memorable, and it suits the game and setting. I'm always the first person to call out a good soundtrack when I hear it, so it really does suck that there wasn't even a single memorable song in this entire game for me. And the final thing I want to say before we get into the story is that this game should have, quite simply put, been 2 separate campaigns, just like virtually every other single Resident Evil game out there that featured more than one character and wasn't co-op. Because Capcom clearly does not know how to properly pace a story between 2 characters without it feeling like some schizophrenic mess where you're constantly jumping back and forth between characters and never know when you're going to be switching next. Because for the first few hours of this game, you'll be jumping back and forth between Grace and Leon what feels like every fucking 15 minutes until you eventually get to the care center where you finally get one section as Grace, like a semi-quarter section with Leon, another section with Grace, another semi-section with Leon, and then you finally get one real section as Leon that goes on for a while. And that all could have been avoided by just splitting it into 2 separate campaigns. Not just would have that helped the pacing, but it also would have helped the replayability, because that is one thing this game certainly lacks, and it'll be made even more apparent when I'm talking about the story, along with my pacing complaints. Because if you felt like replaying the game and just wanted to play as Leon, you could start with him. If you just wanted to play an RE2 style section with Grace, you could jump in with her. But instead we're stuck with this, where you have to go through some shitty hour-long tutorial jumping back and forth between both fucking characters, only to then have to wait hours in between all of the good sections. And that's exactly what I mean by the title of this video when I say that this is half of a good game. Because it has pretty high highs and really fucking low lows. And there can sometimes be hours in between the actual enjoyable parts. And I know it sounds like I have done almost nothing but complain about this game so far, but don't get it twisted. I do not hate this game. I just like to go in detail with all of my videos because I feel like it's my job as a reviewer to make it fully apparent to my watchers what this game is like in case they're considering spending $70 fucking on it or more. That's a pretty decent chunk of change for some people, and it's usually best to just wait till something's on sale nowadays anyways. Like I said earlier, I definitely enjoyed this game more than 7 and 8, and I do think it's a step in the right direction for the newer games going forward. But like I've tried to make it clear, it's only about halfway in the good direction, and depending on which way Capcom decides to split on the next title, will pretty much dictate my interest in this franchise going forward. If they don't address some of these obvious and easy to fix complaints.
You're a fucking disappointment.
So now, the story. And I will try to make this quick because this game is only 10 fucking hours long, and I feel like I've rambled about it enough already. And it's not like this story is worth talking about that much anyways, as you will see now.
I know now that you're the one that I've been searching for. The special one. The chosen one. Miss Ashcroft.
The story begins with our new protagonist Grace at her office as her black boss. Fellow DEI hire approaches her, and we are instantly met with my biggest problem with Grace as a character, and that's simply the fact that she is an absolute stuttery, anxious fucking mess, and borderline feels like some fucking Redditor's self-insert who's meant to be some type of representation for self-diagnosed autism and anxiety. And what I mean by this is outside of her just constant fucking stuttering, stammering, and just zoning out in the middle of talking to people, she also just has constant millennial speech, and by that I mean she's just constantly saying what we the players can see right in front of us on our fucking screen. Basically just self-narrating. You walk by an obvious body on the floor with their fucking head caved in and blood pulling out, and of course Grace has to go, "Oh my god, that looks like a dead guy."
He's dead.
Well, no shit.
And honestly, this is just a problem with modern protagonists in general, and writers just constantly writing what they know, which is millennial speech. And after a while, throughout the course of the entire game, it just gets fucking annoying to listen to. And usually when there's a character like this, at some point in the game, you expect them to have some sort of breaking point or snapping point where they begin to toughen up and get over their fear and start to become a more likable character overall. But that really doesn't happen with Grace until basically the end of the fucking game. And of course that doesn't help you, the player, having to listen to her throughout the actual gameplay, and of course anytime you want to replay the game. And while to be fair, there is a gameplay reason behind this, and that's because her mother, Alyssa, the protagonist from the Outbreak games, after Grace watched her get a fucking kitchen knife shoved through her throat by some unknown cult member. And while it does make sense, it doesn't mean that you couldn't have started her character development earlier in the story for the sake of gameplay enjoyability. And if you really want to go down the whole, oh, it's realistic route, then by realism standards, Grace never would have been hired as a fucking FBI agent to begin with, because as I said, she's a fucking mess. She never would have gotten through FBI's training and a fucking basic mental evaluation, because she's not stable or clearly capable for the goddamn job. She might as well just be some DEI hire because the FBI had some box to tick labeled somewhere under self-diagnosed autism. But I will say, at least Grace is capable of using a gun and isn't too scared to do that, as well as being somewhat smart in a couple story situations where she makes some genuinely pretty good decisions to outsmart the people after her, while also managing to not be completely useless. So at least that is some points to Grace.
Grace! Wait! Grace!
I am about to get racist!
But basically her black boss wants her to go investigate the place where her mother was murdered and traumatized her, because there have been some mysterious murders reported around there lately. Which, is kind of a fucking dick move if you ask me. The FBI could have sent literally anybody to go investigate this, yet he decides to send the fucking stuttering Stanley, who can barely even get up from her desk without knocking shit off of it, because she's so fucking disheveled, and send her to go relive the scene where her mother was brutally killed. And the funny thing is, you literally do not hear from this guy again until the very end of the game. He doesn't even bother to check in on her once. This guy might as well be one of the fucking antagonists if you ask me. Now, Grace, listen up, bitch. Cause I got a job for you in shit. There's been some weird shit happening around that place where your mama died about 20 years ago. And even though I can send anyone in this motherfucking office, I'ma send you, even though you're an absolute fucking spaz and can barely even do your fucking paperwork without flipping shit over the goddamn desk. That cool with you, bitch? Well, I'd rather not. I think I'd rather you send anybody else.
Bitch, did you just talk back?
Shut your ass up and go do your job. Shit. But this is what leads to probably the worst section in the entire fucking game, which is that horribly boring first 2 hours I was talking about earlier, where it's pretty much entirely a scripted hallway simulator, and all you even have to do is just hold W to walk forward down a linear path, and then occasionally press a button to interact with something. And this goes on for about 2 fucking hours. You walk to the crime scene, Grace enters the Twilight Zone, proves once again why she's not capable for this job.
I heard they all have the same weird bruises, so you think it's something infectious, or terrorism, or... Why else would the FBI be investigating, right? Hey, are you with me?
Oh,
Sorry, retarded.
You walk through some creepy looking house, which is, again, pretty much an entirely scripted section, almost get your face blasted off by some zombie cop, find out Bill Cosby's been keeping a firm eye on you, until you eventually come face to face with El Rapo himself, who has a drugged up rag with your name on it.
Hey, who wants to play?
Yeah, boy.
And after this 15 to 20 minute boring gameplay section, you then switch over to Leon for the first time, who you will be playing as for, I shit you not, about 5 fucking minutes, as you then repeat the exact same thing Grace did by walking down the sidewalk. Except, oh wait, Bill Cosby, and he's injecting people on the streets with a new form of the tranny virus, aka the T virus, and as their bloodstream is filled with HRT and the rage of a million, it's up to Leon to hold shift and W as he runs down the street, immediately ending his first gameplay section and then switching back to Grace. As you can see, a great introduction to this game's pacing, as she wakes up at the first finally good part of the game in the care center. Except guess what? You don't get to enjoy it yet because you're still not done with the scripted sections. But as you spend about 10 minutes walking down some fucking hallways just looking around, you're finally introduced to Spear Hunter the Disfigured Hag for the first time, who is as difficult to escape as simply running to the nearest room with lights on fucking 20 feet away, which will cause her to instantly fuck off. You then have to push a cart to get a tool, which leads to that stupid fucking scripted section I was talking about earlier where she smacks the cart, which then leads to yet another scripted chase as you get the fuse you need, and then switch back to Leon for another fucking 5 minutes as you fight a few zombies in a hospital room. Again, I cannot emphasize enough how much this first hour to fucking hour and a half of the game just sucks dick, man. Like, what the fuck is this schizophrenic pacing? This is exactly why chapter selection should have just been a goddamn thing, and also allowed for multiple different playthroughs. But after Leon tosses his handgun, the Requiem, to Grace, with a total of 1 motherfucking bullet, I'm sure Leon felt like an absolute champ after that one.
Take this.
Are you sure?
You might need it. Now go.
You finally get to the first actual main section of the game, which, like I've already said, is the care center. And one of the first things you'll be doing in this care center after you make your way to the first safe room is stumbling upon some freaky looking little blind girl locked in a room. Cosby has been very busy.
You say, Mom, can I have this? She says, that's a no-no. But Mom, you know how I feel about those. But Mom, and don't go asking your father.
And after talking to her, you realize that you need to find these armbands so that you can access the rest of the facility and hopefully get this little girl out. And I'll go ahead and say it because it was painfully obvious to me, just by looking around and reading fucking notes, that the giant spear hunter monster that's been following you around is this girl's sister, who after some experiments morphed into some giant disfigured freak. But it's clear that this little girl has also undergone some experiments, given that she's both blind and locked in the exact same room that her sister escaped from. But since I've already talked about why I like the care center gameplay wise, let me go ahead and talk about a couple of the puzzles in this area that I found absolutely fucking retarded and could have been completely bypassed with the absolute bare minimum of common sense. The first one being the way you acquire the bracelet to the East Wing. But the bracelet to the East Wing is located wrapped around the arm of a dead zombie on an operating table. But covering the bracelet is a literal plastic strap that could be cut through with a pair of goddamn safety scissors. But instead of simply moving it out the fucking way and grabbing the bracelet you need, you have to make your way throughout the entire facility to locate a artificial heart and a pair of artificial lungs to revive this fucking zombie off of the operating table so that you can then kill it again and grab the bracelet. Are you fucking kidding me? Grace, I get that you are deep in the spectrum, but you are fucking pushing it. But just when you think that this bitch doesn't have the most basic of puzzle solving skills, she proceeds to take a fat shit in your mouth again. Because the way you get through the main puzzle in the care center is by finding these 3 blocks: the sun block, the moon block, and the star block. And you get these by finding these 3 machines located throughout the facility and inputting the correct 4-input password. There are only 3 buttons on this fucking controller, one being the sun, one being the star, and one being the moon. But the final machine you locate apparently has the emblems scratched off of it, and instead has Braille located on the buttons. And instead of this stupid dumb bitch taking a few minutes to simply press these 3 goddamn buttons and figure out which button is which would take seconds considering that when you press a button, the tile flips around showing you what it is, she decides to go all the way back to the little girl, put her in danger by carrying her back to the machine so that she can read the Braille and do the puzzle for her.
What are you, retarded? What are you, Down syndrome?
Grace, holy fucking shit. These have to be 2 of the dumbest puzzles in the entire Resident Evil franchise, and it could have been bypassed with the most bare minimum level of common sense. I mean, holy fucking shit, Grace, you couldn't even bother trying to figure out what the buttons were before you risked a little blind girl's life. Genius.
I cannot do this any fucking more. I can't do it anymore.
But as you make your way through the facility and have a couple more encounters with the Codspur himself, narrowly avoiding his drugged rags, and reading some of the notes, you find out that Cosby's real name is Victor Gideon, and he's basically been using this facility to follow Spencer's formula on the T-virus to try and figure out a way for those infected with the T-virus to maintain their memories, as Victor's basically been trying to perfect the formula, and isn't entirely sure what it's even for. But don't worry, his plan is way more retarded than that, as we will find out later. And because he found Grace in one of those files, he just assumes he needs her and her blood to solve the problem. Except again, he doesn't even know what for. He doesn't even know if he needs her blood, he doesn't know if he needs something from her mind, he doesn't know if he needs her left fucking nipple. Victor has zero fucking idea what exactly he needs from Grace, and just assumes that she herself knows. And this is the entire reason he's after her. But as you finally get the last puzzle piece, the poor little girl Grace is grabbed through a fucking wall by Spear Hunter.
Well done, Emily, thank you.
We'll convert your children. I've been hit by this.
As she's on a devious path to try and transition kids. And as she takes the little girl away, Grace decides that she needs to toughen up and go after her, which is when you then finally switch back to Leon for a minuscule sample of his gameplay in yet another 15-minute section, as you basically just make your way through the exact same areas in the care center that you already did as Grace, while grabbing a couple new items that only he can access with his hatchet, until you have a pretty meh boss fight with Boogie himself, as he wasn't very happy with Leon for catching him during Mountain Dew hour. And the reason I say this boss fight's meh, because while it's not shitty or unfun or anything like that, literally all you have to do is just run in a straight line, turn around, shoot. Run in a straight line, turn around, shoot. And then occasionally go in for a finisher with your axe for some bonus damage. It's pretty fucking unintuitive, I'll tell you that. But at least while here, you find out that the reason Leon is here is because all the survivors from Raccoon City have begun developing some strange illness, which appears in the form of almost black-like corrosion as it moves throughout their veins, and has apparently been killing everyone who's come in contact with it, with no known cure in sight, with Leon getting word of Gideon and his facility, hoping that some answers might lie here, after speaking with Sherry. But after this 15 minutes of fun time is over, you again go back to Grace for the fucking basement section, which, like I've already talked about, is fucking mediocre, as you just make your way around moving these fucking fuses from one door to the next, so that you can finally get all of them and free Emily from the cell that Spear Hunter's been deviously holding her in. And after about a fucking hour of hide and seek with this stupid cunt and feeding her about 10 Requiem rounds directly to the back of her head, you finally free the little girl from her clutches and make your way to the elevator. But goddamn, man, I kind of enjoyed this area at first as it was more horror focused, but once I realized just how fucking gimmicky it is and how easy it is to actually hide and get away from the hag, it loses its whole scare factor in about 15 fucking minutes. And the whole area itself just drags on for way too long. There's about one interesting area where you have to shoot zombies into a meat grinder, and the rest of it's just going back and forth in the dark, occasionally having to backtrack even further to get away from the hag. And unfortunately from here, Grace's gameplay sections only go downhill and never again reach the heights of the care center. But do not worry, because your time with Grace is not yet over, because after another narrow escape from Spear Hunter in the elevator shaft, you continue to make your way outside the facility with the little girl until you stumble upon a random black guy who can like fly this helicopter and shit to get you guys to safety, but you gotta go find the keys and shit cause they downstairs.
She mofo butter laying me to the bone, jacking me up. Tight me.
I speak jive. He said that he's in great pain and he wants to know if you can help him.
Then involves you going through what's basically another fucking basement section as you go around sneaking past the fucking girl, or in my case just blasting her in the face with Requiem again, until you get the keys, make your way back, and then he immediately crashes the helicopter and fucking dies.
Terrain. Pull up.
And outside of him fucking dying, the little girl is also injured and begins to start bleeding out. So while Grace begins rushing back into the care center because the helicopter crash attracted a bunch of zombies to her, you then get to play as Leon for another 15 minutes, hooray! As you shoot a couple zombies that are after Grace, and then fight some giant zombie, which might as well just be a mini-boss. Well, I hope you enjoyed your snivel of a sample of Leon gameplay, because you're going right back to Grace, because she's once again being pursued by Spear Hunter the Unrelenting in her never-ending desire to transition children with the T-virus. But this whole thing is basically just some scripted event where you pretty much just make your way to the light switch, turn it on, and then old Spear dies from finally experiencing natural sunlight for the first time. And honestly, I found this whole part to be extremely anticlimactic and a big missed opportunity to, I don't know, maybe actually give Grace some semblance of a fucking boss fight. You were being chased by this thing for the entire first portion of the game. It would have been a little satisfying if you actually got to fight and kill her, but no, let's just do it in a scripted cutscene. But as soon as you try to be a little happy that that bitch is finally gone, Emily, the poor little girl, succumbs to her injuries from the helicopter, and much like her sister Spear Hunter, begins to transform into a fellow HRT beast herself. But just as Grace is about to be killed, Leon shows up and saves the day. And I have a little something to say about this part, because when Leon shows up, you take control of him and are given the option to shoot the girl or not. Me personally, I initially fired one shot and then decided to wait and not shoot just to see what would happen, because I hopefully didn't want to kill the little girl. I mean, she was already dead, but I figured why the fuck would this part even be gameplay if it wasn't some sort of decision. But after waiting for a few seconds, the girl takes a few steps closer and Leon automatically fires a shot and it transitions to a cutscene. And I have more to add to this part because more info is given to us later, but I'll save it for then. Just keep in mind that that entire part was a gameplay section, and if you wanted to, could have just started absolutely fucking unloading on Emily and shot in her multiple times, even in the face. But even after doing what he did, because Leon was given pretty much no choice, Grace decides to start fucking spazzing out on him. And while I kinda feel bad for her, because she felt bad for the little girl and was hoping there was a way to save her, I don't know what the fuck she was expecting after watching her literally mutate and transform as her body deformed itself to become this giant fucking monster. Pretty safe to assume she was already far gone, just like everything else that had been infected by the T-virus so far. But after fucking slobbering on Leon's boots for a second, she decides to get pissed off at him and then decides to do an absolute 1 million IQ genius fucking move. Possibly the smartest thing done in the entire game, honestly. Because she's all pissy, she then proceeds to run to Victor, you know, Bill Cosby, the guy that drugged her, drained her blood, left her upside down on a table, and has been a threatening force to her the entire fucking game for some unknown reason that she has no idea about. What a fucking retard. I mean, what the fuck was this stupid bitch thinking? I mean, are you serious? You get all pissed off at Leon because he did what he had to do, and then you decide to go and run to the absolute fucking creep that looks like a borderline zombie for quite literally zero reason over something that you yourself have zero understanding for. A round of applause for Grace, guys.
That's fucking stupid!
Absolutely phenomenal character. Extremely well written. But then Cosby reveals that this entire time, Wesker has actually had a gay twin brother named Zeno, or more commonly known by his alias, Timu Wesker. And together they want to use Grace to unlock Spencer's final masterpiece called Elpis that I mentioned earlier, because they basically think that it's going to be some sort of bio super weapon. And I mean, to be fair, that would make sense, right? It's Spencer's ultimate creation. You know, the guy that started this entire infection in the first Resident Evil. You know, the guy who we last saw in Resident Evil 5 was talking about wanting to take over the world? Yeah, that Spencer?
Are you saying I was manufactured?
I was to become a god.
So you might say that their assumptions aren't too out there. And I guess because Grace finds Wesker from Alibaba hot and has her floodgates gushing, despite all her good instincts, she decides to leave with them.
What, are you retarded?
This then proceeds to lead to Leon's first actual real gameplay section that's an equivalent to the care center for Grace. Because in one of the previous cutscenes, while looking through one of Victor's computers, he discovers the file that he has on Grace, and also comes to the conclusion that she has something to do with Elpis, and that maybe this will somehow all lead to a cure for him and his friends suffering from the Raccoon City virus. Because what better place to find a cure than Raccoon City itself, which is where Leon heads to next in pursuit of Grace. I mean, how else is Capcom supposed to get them additional nostalgia points?
Remember Ghostbusters? Oh, I remember.
And pretty much the main objective of the Raccoon City area is to find both a motorcycle and 3 parts to a C4 so that you can blow open the gate, blocking the highway and preventing Leon from going further. And overall, this area is really hit or miss, with both highs and lows. Before you actually start this city area, you have your second real boss fight with Leon as you are swiftly attacked by the giant enemy spider.
No thanks, bro.
And while the fight's alright, it's definitely nothing special because the fight pretty much functions the exact same way as when you fight Boogie, where you just run down a hallway, turn around and shoot it, run down a different hallway, turn around and shoot it. But I will say at least it's a little more interesting considering that the spider will sometimes climb on the walls, circle from different angles, and has the ability to sometimes spawn smaller spiders that'll attack you at the same time. But I will say I am at least glad that Capcom remembered the spiders actually existed, since they removed them from the RE2 remake for some fucking reason, even though they only even appear in one part of the map. And it is nice to know that we might actually start seeing them again in the future, since they finally got around to making a new asset for it. But after you beat its ass, that's when you move on to the actual objective of collecting the C4 parts and the motorcycle. And the actual Raccoon City area is kind of a semi-open world. I mean, not really. It's kind of the same way as your normal area, just a lot more wide open, along with having different levels height-wise. But I will say that I do not really want to see areas like this in future Resident Evil games. And the last thing I would fucking want is an actual open world slop RE game, because that's definitely one of the biggest downsides about this section is just the overall map design, as most of it is just pretty fucking boring outside of a couple areas, and the bland color palette with nothing interesting to really look at outside of destroyed rubble and different shades of brown.
Do not redeem! Do not redeem the god! What? Do not redeem the god! Yes, I'm redeeming.
Definitely does not keep you engaged, considering just how long this section goes on for. And one part in particular that's really fucking annoying is when you go to get one of the C4 parts, you have to fight your way up to the top of the roof of one of the buildings, and when you get to the roof, you were then met by zombies with fucking mortars that just relentlessly bomb you non-stop, and you basically just have to sit and hide in these fucking buildings until you can finally get a good enough vantage point to pick them off. There's also a couple zombies with fucking guns that just randomly spray in an arc, and if they even touch you, it damn near takes your entire fucking health bar even if you have armor. And considering how far their range is and how fast they can spam that, you can get hit and not even realize where the fuck it's coming from half the goddamn time. Combine that with the mortars, and this area just wound up annoying me more than anything else. Oh, I can't even see these stupid niggas. Where the fuck are they shooting from? On a somewhat positive note, one of the more interesting areas is when you go to get the final C4 part, you have to make your way up a fallen and destroyed skyscrapers, and in certain areas, you have to walk across the glass while fighting zombies, and you can use it to your advantage by shooting the floor out from underneath them. And overall, this was definitely probably the most visually interesting part of the entire map, and if more of the parts were like this, then this part might have actually been up there with the initial Grace Care Center. Although even with that being said, the Raccoon City probably did still wind up being Leon's best area, as he only really has 2 more after this, with one of them being quite fucking shit, and the other one not being as bad, but I still think I enjoyed the city section overall. But another thing that was definitely lacking in Raccoon City was the enemy variety, as pretty much the whole time you'll just be fighting 2 different fucking zombies, and that's either the ones with the spears or the ones with the guns. So not just is the map that you have to traverse really visually boring, but so are the zombies as well. And I think I would have preferred it if this was just done more like the care center, and you instead had to make your way through one giant building, solving a few puzzles, and worrying more about inventory management. But after finally getting the last C4 part, you blow up the fence, ending the Raccoon City section, as you ride off after Grace on the motorcycle you found, and thank God, because by the time I got to this point, I was more than ready for it to be done, because this whole area felt like it just dragged for way too long. Now, while I'm not gonna lie, I personally enjoyed this next section, as it was pretty fun, even if it was heavily scripted. I do gotta say that a couple parts of this were really over the top, with the biggest example probably being Leon driving almost completely vertical up the side of a fallen skyscraper, directly into a Red Bull style jump. Personally, I thought this was pretty funny, because Leon had absolutely no way of knowing that there'd be a perfect ramp on the other side, and if there happened to be nothing, then the scene pretty much just would have ended up like this. So while this part might have been a little too RE6 for some people, like I said, I'm not gonna lie, I definitely grinned a little bit, and it was a bit refreshing to the fucking drag-ass Raccoon City section. Although I will say, I don't know where the fuck these mutated dogs came from, because that's something you easily could have thrown into the city section to increase the enemy variety a little bit. But no, I guess that would be too hard, because then we would actually have to program AI for the dog instead of a scripted scene. But after Leon and old Cosby have a joust off, Cosby accidentally swallows a few of his own sleeping pills and knocks himself right out of the game until basically the very end, so we will see him later. And with that, we move on to Leon's second and worst section, with that being the Raccoon City Police Department, which is disappointing as all fuck to say, because this easily should have been Leon's best section. But the reason the RPD section is so dog shit is because you quite literally do nothing there. There's no enemies to fight, there's no real puzzles, fucking nothing. You just walk down a couple hallways, grab a couple items, there is one zombie to shoot purely for the sake of member berries, and how that police zombie still happens to even be alive at this point, don't fucking question it. But you basically just walk Leon down Memberberry Lane as he sees memorabilia from the second game, and basically feels bad about the entire thing, because yes, in this game they are still doing the Leon guilt thing, even though they already did that in RE4 Remake. But of course we have to drag this arc on, even though Leon's 49 years old. He can't just get over his fucking guilt by now and have a new character arc. He has to be mildly depressed and dying at the same time. But I guess on the plus side, at least Leon does still drop a few one-liners throughout the game.
Or we can begin your treatment.
A silent treatment, I hope. I think I want a second opinion. Oh, I miss our Raccoon City hospitality.
So it's not like he just wants to die. But after you make your way through a few rooms and grab a couple fucking items in this shit area, you make your way upstairs, and that's when you run into Grace and Great Value Wesker again, after he explains to Grace that what he thinks Elpis is, based off of reading Spencer's research, is basically a mind control virus. He then proceeds to tell Grace one of the stupidest fucking plot twists about this entire fucking game. And basically what he tells Grace is that those two little girls from earlier, the ones that mutated, were clones of Grace, and that Grace is actually a clone herself, part of these experiments to apparently crack the genetic code to unlock the key to Elpis. And as you will see at the end of the game, this guy has no idea what the fuck he is even talking about and is making all of this based on assumptions out of his goddamn ass, based purely off of the type of person Spencer is. And this winds up being even more retarded than it already sounds. And again, why is Grace special? Who the fuck knows? What is the key to unlock Elpis? Who the fuck knows? What even is Elpis really? Who the fuck knows? This then proceeds to lead to arguably the worst part of the fucking game, probably the second worst part. The only reason this isn't the #1 worst part of the game is only because the intro to the game is a lot longer and just as linear. But he shows Grace a video on the computer of another one of the Grace clones from the past, and instead of just showing this to us as a cutscene that could have been done in just a couple minutes, we have to play out this fucking cutscene that happens in the past, and also for some fucking reason happens in the exact same place as the worst section about the RE2 remake, when you have to play as Sherry. First off, I don't know what the fuck Capcom was thinking, making us basically redo this boring ass section that was the worst fucking part about this game and does nothing but hurt replayability, just like it does in this game. But on top of that, how the fuck is this even taking place at the same area? Is this just a lazy reused asset, or are you telling me this is actually taking place in the same fucking part? But this entire section is just you having to play as this little fucking girl, as you have to sneak around these fucking little zombie Fint dolls that, from what I've gathered, are just other clones of this girl that have already undergone the procedures for this genetic code bullshit. But obviously it didn't work, and instead turned them into little fucking gub test tube babies. And at the end of this section, you find out that apparently this girl is also experiencing side effects, so it's most likely that she died later as well. But this whole fucking area is literally just hide here and wait for a scripted fucking cutscene, walk to a different section, hide again, wait for a scripted fucking cutscene, rinse repeat until you get to the end. It's not fun narratively, it's not fun gameplay wise, and it does nothing but hurt the fucking replayability of this game, which it's already lacking, even though Resident Evil is supposed to be all about replayability. Such stupid fucking decisions that prevent this from being a really good Resident Evil game, and shit that just seems like basic common sense. This whole thing should have just been a goddamn cutscene, since that's basically what it is in game anyways. It's a fucking video. We're playing a fucking video monitor.
Stupid the fucking game.
And after seeing this, Grace starts spazzing the fuck out, wondering if her mom is even her real mom and if her entire life is just a lie, legit falling into a damn existential crisis, as if she wasn't already spastic enough throughout the rest of the game. And then Leon finally decides to step in and do something, and fire a few rounds at Fagster, which is when we then find out that not just is he a clone of Wesker, but he also has his exact same abilities from Resident Evil 5, and is obviously a huge fucking threat, since he's basically just a superhuman straight from the Matrix. Oh yeah, and in case you're wondering where a perfect clone of Wesker came from, who also seems to have a perfect replication of his powers from the Ouroboros virus, well, don't, because we never get any fucking answers about it, and it's never even once questioned. Leon himself doesn't even seem to recognize this Wesker clone, so I guess Chris just never told him about the events of RE5. I guess the corporation he works for never told him about the events of RE5, and I guess Leon just somehow never fucking found out about Wesker, because he never even once mentions the lookalike or the similarity in powers. But yet, this is just another example of how fucking broken this whole story is anyways. This great value fuck even has the audacity to rip off Wesker's legendary 7-minute line.
7 minutes. 7 minutes is all I can spare to play with you.
And instead makes it gay and lame by saying, "I have no time to spare." You are not him, bro.
I'm the guy. Stop saying you're the guy. We all know that you're not the guy.
He's not the guy. I am.
That right is now mine. Here I am offering you my precious time, and you waste it by running around. Oh, playtime is over. How fortunate for you. 7 minutes. 7 minutes is all I can spare to play with you.
You disappoint me. Is that the best you've got?
But then for some reason, instead of just using his enhanced abilities to instantly kill Leon before he can react to it with the human eye, he decides to activate his face-down trap card, Membarbarius Destructicus, and summons Mr. fucking X in attack position. That's right, just when you thought Capcom couldn't do enough callbacks, somehow there's another fucking Mr. X, and he also happens to be here in RPD. I said out loud, are you fucking kidding me? When I got to this part of the game. And you know, while on the topic, I gotta say that this game is so filled with member berries that almost every single mainline Resident Evil villain from the OG games makes an appearance at some point in this game. Spencer is a huge part of this game's plot and appears in a couple cutscenes. The main villain from RE1, Mr. X, has now appeared, the main face antagonist of RE2. It turns out that Victor Gideon, aka Cosby, was actually infected with a variant of the Nemesis strain, meaning that he's actually part of the Nemesis family from Resident Evil 3. And then we have Ollie Bobby Wesker from Resident Evil 5. I was half expecting goddamn Salazar to walk on screen at some point in the game.
I've been expecting you, my brethren.
But on the plus side, after a couple lame running away scripted sections, you do get probably the best boss fight for Leon after Mr. X transforms into his tyrant form, because it's at least a pretty fun fight with some cool and unique animations and has something to it other than run down a hallway and turn around and shoot the thing a few times. There's also one thing I thought was kinda cool where if you get hit by one of Mr. X's attacks, he punches you up in the air and does a finisher to you exactly like Leon gets hit by in one of the animated movies, which I'm pretty sure if happened to anybody other than Leon would have turned them into a fucking splat on the wall. But after this fight and the only, and I mean the only good part about the RPD section, finally move on to the final part of the game after you make your way through a subway system and follow Grace and Zeno into an underground umbrella facility. But before you go inside, you have one more boss fight where you have to fight a giant plant. Real spooky stuff. But the main reason it was pretty fun is because it was at least something different other than a hallway fight and was more reminiscent of an old school Resident Evil boss where you have to shoot its weak points. And while it was nothing too special, it was definitely cooler than the majority of Leon's sections. But after you finally make your way inside, you'll actually discover a new enemy type. You have to wind up fighting some humans who I assume are corporation agents working under Zeno. And the game actually turns into a third-person shooter for a time, considering that they all have assault rifles and are definitely smarter than your average zombie. This part wasn't too hard, but they definitely do a lot of fucking damage. So while I haven't gotten to this part on Insanity yet, I can only imagine how much of a pain in the ass it's gonna be. And after a few more hallway areas, you finally come face to face with a familiar figure. And this whole fight is something that's gonna have a lot of fans pissed the fuck off, because you actually encounter Hunk. Yeah, that's right, Hunk. But the game doesn't address him as such, so instead the game just addresses him as the Commander. But it's really fucking obvious that it's him, considering that not just does he share the same voice actor as Hunk, but he's wearing the exact same attire, and you can also see once his glove comes off at the end of the fight that he's also infected with the exact same virus as Leon, meaning that he's a Raccoon City survivor. But I'm not gonna lie to you, this whole fight was a lot more lame than it should have been, and is basically just a worse version of the Krauser fight in the RE4 remake. So again, I don't know how they managed to downgrade from not just one of their older games, but from a mainline game to a fucking remake. And the whole fight is basically just an easy ass parry battle, and there's absolutely nothing special to it. Hunk just winds up getting his ass beat by Leon, since by this point Leon's on a different fucking power scaling system. Meanwhile, Hunk doesn't even have his own game. Sorry bud, best we can do is Mercenaries and Fourth Survivor. Well, I'm sure this is gonna have a lot of fanboys just pissed off. On the plus side, it turns out that Hunk actually isn't dead, because if you go back to where you fought him afterward, his body is no longer there, and he is the only enemy in the entire game whose body does not remain there after you kill him, pretty much just confirming that either Hunk is gonna return at some point, or at the very least he isn't dead. Kind of a cop-out, especially considering what we see Leon do to him. But I guess, considering that we saw Leon jump off a fucking skyscraper on a motorcycle, it's not the stupidest thing that could have happened.
That makes sense to me.
And with Hunk out of the way, Leon finally makes his ass to Grace and Timu Wesker. But because he's a goddamn superhuman with crackhead speed, and Leon's practically dying of AIDS by this point, he swiftly kicks Leon's ass, only managing to land one good hit, and is about to kill him, until finally at almost the end of the fucking game, Grace shows a little character development, grows a pair of ovaries, and stops her fucking stammering by threatening to shoot herself if Zeno kills Leon, knowing that he needs her alive for her mystery meat or whatever. And luckily by doing that, it gives Leon enough time to grab her and temporarily retreat from the facility. Fortunately though, by this point, Leon is on his fucking deathbed with the Troon virus in full force pushing estrogen through his veins, meaning that Grace is gonna have to go back in on her own for the first actual lab section and the final section of the game. And like I'm pretty sure I said earlier, Grace's lab section is alright. It's still nowhere as good as the initial care center, but at the very least it's a little better than the fucking shitty ass hide and seek basement. But really this part's main issue is that it just isn't very interesting. I will admit that there is a couple cool things to look at, but that's about it. There's no real good puzzles or anything else really. The only new thing in this area is that now there's lickers to deal with, but they're genuinely not a problem at all, because not just do you have a shit ton of ammo by this point, but all the lickers basically just get one hit killed by any Molotov or this new acid grenade you can find in the lab, and are extremely easy to craft, and I was pretty much never at a shortage of, and even if I did run out, like I said, I still had plenty of ammo. So this whole area is pretty much just making your way through a lab and tossing throwables at shittily programmed lickers. And the funny thing is, Capcom only even made a single animation for when the lickers catch on fire, so every single time you toss a throwable at a licker, you'll just see the exact same thing with zero variation. And if you happen to hit two of them at the exact same time, then both their animations will be in 100% sync. It honestly just reminded me of some shit from a PS3 game.
Suck my ass, won't you suck my ass? Just.
On the plus side though, this area doesn't really overstay its welcome, and you quickly make your way to the main console, which is where this game has the fucking audacity to reveal its stupidest retcon and plot twist yet.
Neither of us got the book smarts you do. We're a little more on the street smart side of things.
Yeah, ease up.
He's retarded.
But on this computer, Grace stumbles upon a video. And on this video, it is revealed that Spencer actually felt guilty for all the horrible shit he has done in creating the virus that started all this horrible shit in almost every single Resident Evil game. And in fact, he felt so guilty about it that in his final days, he actually developed Elpis as a cure for the T-virus to amend for all his wrongdoings, and that Elpis isn't actually a weapon at all, like Faxter and Cosby seems to think. In addition to that, it turns out that there's actually nothing special about Grace at all, and she's just one of the clones from the facility that Spencer apparently felt bad for and decided that at least one of them needed to live a normal life. So he took Grace out of the facility before she had any experiments experiments done on her, and then gave her to Alyssa to raise her as a normal girl. At least that's what I've gathered, cause this whole thing is fucking horribly explained, and even if you go online, there are so many people asking questions. Cause not just do I buy that someone like Spencer actually feels guilty for all of this when he's basically comically evil, but literally the last time we saw Spencer was on his fucking deathbed, and his final words were about wanting to take over the world.
Ironic, isn't it? For one who has the right to be a god.
What the fuck kind of bullshit are you trying to convince me into believing here, Capcom, with this stupid ass retcon? As if this would even remotely make amends for his bullshit to begin with, after millions of people have already died and a city has been nuked. But you can see why all that previous shit was so retarded then. That means that Gideon and Zeno basically just saw a picture of Grace on the fucking computer and somehow jumped to the wild asinine conclusion that somehow she's the key to Elpis, not even having any idea what that even means. They're like, oh, genetic code? Could that be her blood? Is it a password? Who knows? And basically relied their entire plan on not just her, but also not even knowing what the fuck Elpis even is.
That's fucking stupid.
How exactly does the whole timeline with the orphanage even work? At one point in the game, they referred to Grace as the original, and they were saying that she was special out of all the other clones. But from what I read in the notes in the game, that orphanage and the experiments had been going on since the fucking 80s, and Grace is only like 22 years old. So there's absolutely zero possible way she could be the original. And not just that, but from other things I've read in the notes, I think, and again I say I think, that Spencer was doing that whole cloning facility because he basically wanted to try and achieve immortality, and the reason he was cloning those girls is because he was trying to figure out a way to transfer the memories to each clone so that he could pretty much just keep putting himself into a new body and constantly have the same mind. As if that isn't just cartoonishly evil, doing that to little girls and fucking cutting their heads open and experimenting on them so that you can achieve immortality. I mean, that is straight up literally some satanic shit that I would expect to find in some certain underground tunnels in the city of New York.
These people are an absolute cancer.
Truly gonna be the end of the human species.
That's anti-Semitic, Brittany. You better watch your tone.
Oh yeah, I almost forgot they fund the news.
I mean, are we supposed to hear all this and then think that Spencer actually deserves forgiveness or some shit? Please don't tell me this is yet another game about forgive your enemies. Hold on, who wrote this game? I don't know, I can't find much info on it, but something tells me this guy would probably refer to me as a goy.
If you eat with a Gentile, it is as if you have eaten with a dog.
But after discovering this retarded info of preposterous magnitudes, we then switch back to Leon, who is currently slipping in and out of his Fent comas for his final gameplay section. So I'll make this quick, because to put it bluntly, there is just not much to say about Leon's lab section, as you pretty much just re-go through the exact same areas you already just went through as Grace, basically no puzzles, and all you do is shoot shit, pretty much just like every other Leon gameplay section. I'd say it's not as good as the city, especially since it's way shorter, but at the very least, I guess it's better than the RPD, but I mean, like I said before, that's really not saying much, considering that RPD basically has jack shit to do. And while sure it's pretty fun to just go through fucking stuff up and shooting lickers, they still managed to also ruin this section by bringing back one of the worst sections of the RE4 remake, even under the exact same circumstances, with that being the slow forced walking segments while Leon fucking dies of AIDS. I mean seriously, this part already fucking sucked in the 4 remake and is nothing but annoying on multiple playthroughs, as you pretty much just have to sit there and hold the W key, waiting for the next cutscene, and for some reason they just had to bring it back in this game. Like, we get it. Leon's sick. He's dying. You have made that apparent through the cutscenes and dialogue, and simply through the way he looks this entire goddamn game. I fucking get it. You don't need to treat your player like they're retarded by just rubbing it in your face and being like, see, look how sick he is. Now waste a couple minutes holding W when we could have just made this a cutscene. But as everyone knows, a modern game is not a modern game without walk and talk movie sections. But on the bright side, at least this section doesn't go on for too long, because you quickly meet back up with Grace and Timu Wesker for the final boss and the end of the game. But don't worry, because just in case you think this game's story hadn't made enough stupid decisions yet, I promise you they're not finished. So pretty much what happens is Leon meets back up with Grace, and he says to her, I'm going to destroy Elpis. Even though we don't know the password, any wrong password should destroy it. Until suddenly Grace hits him with the, I have a plan, trust me. Even though we have no fucking idea what that plan is. And then the game presents you with a choice. That's right, this game has 2 different endings, although it might as well just have one when you hear how dog shit the other one is. But you were given the decision to either release Elpis or destroy Elpis. And if you, as a longtime OG Resident Evil player, make the logical, completely reasonable decision of not trusting the complete fucking baby-eating psychopath Spencer by taking his word at face value, and just taking the fact that they've been calling Elpis a bioweapon the entire game, and because of that choose to destroy Elpis, then you're rewarded by getting to watch Leon be brutally executed by Gay Wesker. I mean, seriously, if you choose to destroy Elpis, then your whole ending is basically just getting to watch Leon be humiliated. He gets his ass beat by Fagster at super speed, and then gets his fucking dome blown off by a comically large handgun. It's so shit that it genuinely makes you wonder why it's even a decision in the first place. This ending might as well just be called Watch Leon Die in 4K. And the worst part is that if you are an OG fan and you actually have played the original games, then this is probably the decision you would make. Since, like I said earlier, the last time we saw Spencer, he was talking about becoming a fucking god or some shit. But the real ending is actually choosing to release Elpis, because Grace 100% trusts that video at face value, and apparently the word Elpis means hope in Greece or some shit. I shit you not, that is basically the only reasoning behind it. And on top of that, how the fuck does Grace even know that's the password? Was it just a lucky guess? Because all she saw was the same video we saw, and there was no real mention of a password there. And Leon right before this literally says, a wrong password would mean destruction. So did she literally just wing this whole thing on the word hope? That's what I'm saying, man. This game's story is just fucking stupid, and half of it completely rides on coincidences and assumptions. And even better, after you release Elpis, you know what Xeno does? He immediately injects himself with it. No questions, no testing, not even a bother to see what it does. He just injects himself with it. That's like if you were wondering if a drink was poisonous. So instead of doing some sort of test, or maybe taking a tiny sip or something first, you just immediately chug the whole fucking bottle and hope for the best. But hey, I guess considering how retarded Xeno has been the rest of this game, it kind of falls in line with his character. So of course, since he gets his powers from one of the viruses, it cures him, and now he's just a normal bum-ass human. And then this is when Cosby himself returns to explain to Xeno and us the player what actually happened. And it's funny because even fucking Victor starts trying to act like a Redditor and copes! Instead of being pissed off that he wasted his time on this thinking it's a bioweapon, he immediately starts coping and he's like, God damn Spencer, your sheer genius humbles me. Take his fucking balls out your mouth, you absolute fraud.
Glaze me! Here comes the money shot, oh yeah!
But after he finishes wiping the leftover Spencer off of his lips, he immediately kills Xeno.
The Connections is done with you!
You're a pussy.
That's right, the Wesker clone, gone. Just like that. And this is probably the part of the story that legitimately pissed me off the most. I figured that if anything good was gonna come from this shitty gay Wesker clone, it would have been a Wesker boss fight. I was hoping that in some point in the game, we would have an RE5 style boss fight, except with Leon this time, where we had to figure out some clever way to damage him and work around his super speed. But no, that's too much work for Capcom. All we get is shoot the giant glowing blister, or the same fucking hallway fight, just reskinned. And even if Leon didn't win the fight, because he's sick or whatever, it would have at least made the, you know, video game more fun gameplay wise if there was at least a cool boss fight. But no, this bum motherfucker disappears from the story just as fast as he appears, and practically gets the Count Dooku treatment. Both these motherfuckers are fraud. Cosby's a fucking fraud nemesis, and this motherfucker's a fraud Wesker. Two fucking great value ripoffs that weren't even able to offer a boss fight as good as their original. But now that the metaphorical knee has been removed from Leon's neck and he can finally breathe, that's when the final boss fight with Victor begins. And I gotta say, holy shit, this was one pathetic final boss. In fact, just like the difficulty with this game in general, I would say that Victor is by far the easiest final boss in any Resident Evil game. And ironically, his first phase is probably more difficult than his second phase, but can also be entirely skipped if you do what I did.
Nah, give me that shit. Stupid, I'm not gonna let you get the chance.
But the first part of this fight is honestly a little more interesting because Victor starts pulling some fucking Final Fantasy magic out of his ass and summoning lightning, and you at least have to pay some attention to dodge all of his attacks. Not that they do that much damage anyways, but a couple minutes into this fight, Victor fathoms an RPG out of the thin air, which you can actually shoot out of his hand, pick up off the floor, and then one-shot his ass with. Hell, the second he whipped that RPG out, my first thought was, can I shoot that out of his hand? And sure enough, you can. So on one hand, I gotta give Capcom props for actually allowing me to do that, but on the other hand, it just makes a comically easy final boss that much easier when you can almost instantly skip to his second phase. And his second phase is so fucking easy, you basically don't even have to think about it, but it's pretty much the most old school Resident Evil boss out of all of them, where all you have to do is shoot the glowing orbs that appear on his body. But the reason it's so easy is because it pretty much only takes one bullet to destroy each of these, and there's only about 6 of them, meaning you can whip out your SMG, spray in a straight line, and destroy all of them in seconds. I mean, you can just look at my footage here. Not just did I get this boss on the first try, but he barely even took any of my health, so while it's not the most visually worst Resident Evil boss, I gotta say, it's probably the worst gameplay wise, as it's just pathetically easy and offers zero challenge. I mean seriously, that's what I was saying, that this dude's just a fraud nemesis, because this dude is actually supposed to be stronger than the nemesis from Resident Evil 3, but you would never guess that based off the gameplay. Resident Evil 3 nemesis makes this dude look like a fucking pussy. But pretty much right after you kill him, the story wraps up as you guys now have the cure for the T-virus, Leon's healthy, and the game is mostly wrapped up. Although I will say real quick that I'm not really sure where the Resident Evil franchise is going to go from this point onwards, since they now have a cure for the virus. If I had to guess, the Plagas from Resident Evil 4 might make a return, or the mold from RE7, but clearly they're gonna have to start going a different route for future games, since apparently zombies are just no longer gonna be a thing, and personally I don't know how I feel about that. That's one reason I wasn't the biggest fan of Resident Evil 7 and 8, as they personally just didn't feel that much like Resident Evil games to me. When I'm spending most of my time fighting a fucking redneck family and vampire and werewolves. So if they go the route of the Plagas, I wouldn't have much of a problem with that, but I am a bit interested to see what they do to make up for it. But before I give the final score and wrap up this this video, there's one more moment in the story that gets revealed that I gotta say something about, because I brought it up earlier and it's fucking retarded. But you remember how I mentioned that when Emily, the little girl, transforms into the giant fetus beast, and for some reason it switches over to gameplay for a second as you're given the choice to shoot her with Leon? And like I said earlier, because it's gameplay, that means that you could have just straight mag dumped on her and shot her multiple times. Yeah, you do? Well, guess what? Leon tells Grace that there is a chance that Emily is still alive and can be saved because apparently he, and I quote, avoided her vitals. Motherfucker, are you kidding me?
That is without a doubt the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You are a fucking idiot.
Which is again why I have to ask, then why was that moment even gameplay? Not just does it not matter how many times you shot her, but it just makes that line even stupider when you could have shot her like 4 fucking times in the head with Requiem. And on top of that, how the fuck does Leon even know where her vitals are? Not just did she transform into a never before seen monster whose vitals could have been anywhere, but who's to assume she even still has the same vital points as a human? You remember the Regenitors in RE4? And how they literally would not die unless you shot the multiple parasites hidden inside of it with the thermal vision? Who's to say her vital point wasn't in her chest or any of the other points you shot? It's just fucking stupid. Not to mention that she was already injured before she even became the zombie from the crash, and her body has quite literally just been lying under rubble ever since that scene happened. How is she not long dead? And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this because I wanted the little girl to die or anything. I mean, I'm glad she survived. It's just the way Capcom chose to do it makes it fucking stupid. And then on top of that, when it does show us Emily's body, she looks completely normal and is laying inside of the body, almost like it's a cocoon or something. But in the cutscene, we literally watched her body deform and morph itself into this freakish beast. It didn't form itself around her like a cocoon, her entire body morphed. Again, makes no fucking sense. Whereas this scene could have made complete sense if they just took the player control away in that one scene and just had Leon shoot her one time. And then the final thing I gotta say, because again, what the fuck is going on with this game's story, dude? Remember how I said all that clone stuff earlier? How apparently Grace is a clone and she was an original and all that? Well, guess what? At the end of the game, they actually say that Grace is a completely normal girl, pretty much implying that she wasn't a clone, I think, and that everything they told her was basically bullshit. So what the fuck is it, Capcom? What is it? Is she a clone from the orphanage or not? Was she taken from a young age by Spencer or not? Was Emily and that other girl a clone of her or not? And if they're not, then why the fuck do they look just like her? If you're actually gonna say that Grace is just a normal girl that has nothing to do with those experiments, but not just why the fuck did Spencer have her picture, but on top of that, I just find that all way too big of a coincidence to believe. She just happens to look just like all these girls. All this info about her just happens to be in the files, but oh, she's just normal. I already said it doesn't make sense that she's the original since the cloning program had been going on since the 80s. But I'm not entirely sure what they meant by this line, and clearly many other people online are just as confused as I am because of how poorly explained this shit was. And keep in mind, I took my time with this game, explored everything, and read basically all notes. So if you would just rush through the main story, you'd understand even less than I do. But since this video is almost 2 goddamn hours, I'm finally done ranting about the story, so let's just get on to the conclusion and the final score. So like I've said at a couple points throughout this video, despite all my ranting and bitching, I did not hate this game or dislike. In fact, if it came out last year, it almost certainly probably would have been on my top 5 best list, especially considering just how much dog shit came out last year. It easily probably would have knocked Kazan down a peg, that's for sure. And like I said as well, I definitely still like this game more than Resident Evil 7 and 8, and I do think that this is more the type of game they need to go back to. But the reason I'm so hard on this game is because I really like Resident Evil games. I'm a fan of the franchise. And like I said as well, I was also a fan of Capcom as a company at one point, and I'm so sick and tired of seeing them drop the ball on successful IPs that they have already done well multiple times, such as Dragon's Dogma 2, Monster Hunter. At this point, I'm honestly genuinely scared for DMC 6, because God knows what they're gonna fuck up with that franchise. I can see the potential with this game, but it's just the fact that it could have been so much better if it weren't for all these stupid little decisions. The fact that I could talk about the gameplay for almost an hour alone should point out just how many issues there are with it. But really, one of this game's biggest issues is just being a game of extremes, and it felt like they tried to take an extreme balance of scary and action, pretty much taking the most extreme aspects of fucking like Resident Evil 6, and then trying to combine them with the slow, more Outlast style gameplay of Resident Evil 7. And when you try to mash those into one game, not in separate campaigns, just constantly bouncing back and forth between two characters, not just does it severely damage this game's replayability, which is really important for a Resident Evil game, but it makes the whole game feel like a disjointed mess in general, especially when the characters don't even really have equal playing time, and half of Leon's sections just feel like they were tacked on at the last minute because they didn't feel like Grace would sell enough copies on her own. Yet even with all of its problems, it did still have that Resident Evil charm at several points, as well as having some pretty damn high points that were really enjoyable and even made me reminisce about the older games. It's just a shame that it couldn't keep that type of consistency throughout. And because of everything said in this video, as well as just the stupid ass story moments, I feel like the best score for Resident Evil Requiem is a 7 out of 10, a slightly above average game. And would I recommend it? If you're a Resident Evil fan, then I mean yeah, because you'll probably like it, if not just have some complaints and nitpicks like I did. But I don't think it's like so bad that you need to skip it or anything like that. But what I wouldn't do is pay $70 fucking for it, because not just is the game itself only about 8 to 10 hours long, even shorter than the RE4 remake, but also, like I said, it has no additional content such as Mercenaries or Fourth Survivor, the replayability is currently severely lacking, and Insanity mode is currently horribly balanced, which literally is the only reason to replay the game at the moment. So either wait for a nice half-off Steam sale, or just do what I did and just buy it off G2A for $40 to $50, because it already is half off on there, probably because most people realize that it suffers from all the problems I've mentioned here, and everyone quickly realized that the replayability is dog shit. So hopefully Capcom will actually listen to some of the complaints and tweak them for Resident Evil 10 whenever that comes out in the next fucking 10 years or so. But at the same time, with the direction that Capcom's been taking as a company, I wouldn't count on it, especially since this game's been getting damn near more glazed than Expedition 33, when I wouldn't even put this in the top 3 best Resident Evils. But of course, that's just how things are with AstroTurf culture nowadays. A game's either unplayable dog shit that's an insult to you for even buying it, or it's so fucking good that it's a masterpiece that nothing else will surpass in the next decade. Rinse and fucking repeat. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, feel free to leave a like and a sub, and a big thanks to this channel's members and Poirlights. Your guys' support really means a lot to me, especially for making long-ass, time-consuming videos like this, and I will see you guys next time.